I'm Cassidy Waring, and I'm a songwriter and performer.
How does it feel to be having a documentary made about you?
Yeah, it is. It's surreal. It's very exciting and a little strange. I think that for me, I am very grateful when I get to witness the experience of other people. When I get to watch the process of something and how people get from one place to another, how something is made, I really appreciate the vulnerability. So if sharing my own story can kind of do that for somebody else, then that's really cool. It's important for me to share my story because as I've experienced playing music and talking about these topics in public and getting more comfortable with that, the amount of connection that I have found with other people, the community that I have found through other people having similar experiences and seeing part of their story or something that they can relate to reflected back at them has meant so much. And when I get to hear other people's stories, the same thing happens for me. It's like holding up a mirror. And I think that kind of distance from our own experience, something we can relate to, but it's not so personal to us, can actually help us understand our own stories a little better, help us understand ourselves better, because there's maybe like more permission, not so much shame when there's that bit of distance.
Let's talk a little bit about what life was like before you discovered songwriting. Where were you at in your life? What was going on?
Okay. Yeah, I've been thinking about this. When I moved out to Vancouver, I was 23. And I think I was using a lot of coping mechanisms that I think I wasn't recognizing as coping mechanisms at the time. When my mom passed away and when things were getting really hard at home, it was the same years that I was kind of first exploring and experimenting with substance use, with exploring my sexuality, and they became like amazing escapes. And when I was in my 20s and I first moved to Vancouver, it's a new city, I didn't know a lot of people, I really kind of chalked up a lot of my social behavior to just having fun and being in my 20s. But, there was a lot of nights where I was drinking to the point of blacking out, where I was kind of seeking out social situations where I didn't really know anybody, and kind of where I didn't feel safe, kind of almost like seeking out what felt like dangerous people or dangerous situations. And what I experienced through that was just so much shame. Like, I'd have these nights where I just chalked it up to being in my 20s, and then I would just feel so horrible because I was really escaping a lot of pain. So I think that's kind of where I was before I kind of discovered songwriting and then discovered therapy.
So coping, but coping not in a way that was helping.
Yeah, it felt like it was helping in the moment, but the shame afterwards, I could tell that I was feeling really bad about not respecting my body.
And so how did you discover songwriting as an outlet? Or was it performing first, rather?
Yeah. Well, performing has always kind of been part of my life. When I came out to Vancouver, I thought that I would continue to pursue acting. Songwriting wasn't really something that I had done very much of, maybe a little bit. But when I came out here, I started going to open mics as a way to meet people. And I was playing other people's songs, doing covers. And then I started to write my own songs, and that's when I just found this, it felt electric. It felt like this way of learning things about myself that I didn't know about. I would start writing a song, kind of working on one thought or idea, and then this whole understanding of myself came out. Like I wouldn't remember writing the song. I'd go into like a creative flow state or something. And that just, it started to teach me so much about my own feelings and so much about my own experience.
How did it feel to perform your own material for the first time?
Really scary. Yeah, I think I was very nervous to perform my own songs at first, but then like the feeling that came after performing my own songs just felt so good. The connection that I made with people afterwards, talking about things, talking about the songs, that really meant a lot to me. And I just kind of kept doing it. And it didn't feel hard. It just felt like this thing that I wanted to do all the time. I was just like constantly writing songs when I started writing. The tools that I used for songwriting, I definitely used old diaries and photographs. I used home videos. I journal a lot, and I've always journaled a lot. And so really I'd use my journal entries. There'd be something that would come up while I was journaling, and that would often be where a song started, an idea or a thought or a belief about myself that I kind of wanted to keep exploring. So that's a lot where it came from.
I mean, this is deeply personal.
Yeah.
Music that you're creating here. What would you say is the hardest part about sharing that much of yourself when you're up on stage?
It's gotten a lot easier to be more personal on stage. When I started writing songs, they were just metaphors. Like I couldn't tell you what some of them were really about. There was a lot of protection around the really personal aspects of the songs. But the more that I started to write in a way that was more vulnerable and very honest, the better it felt and the more people seemed to relate to the songs. And that's just kind of where it kept heading, to these like very personal songs.
For those of us who haven't heard your music, what are some of the things that we would hear in one of your albums?
My first album, Lonesome Reunion, it shared a lot of similar themes. I wrote a lot about growing up, a lot about my family. This next album goes a lot deeper, and it's much more focused on the things that I discovered through therapy. So there's a lot more exploring symptoms, exploring things that I thought were just part of my personality, and as I've learned, oh, that's not just part of my personality. I mean, it's also part of who I am, but where does it come from? Where did this originate? Where did these type of reactions come from? Where did this anxiety come from? What are these emotional flashbacks that I'm having? And I really wanted to explore those things. And so it became kind of this dance of maybe having a therapy session and something coming up, and then me wanting to explore it further in a way that I can do that without getting so stuck in my own head and getting so self-critical and judgmental and analytical, was to start playing a song. Because there's a bit of distance there too. When you're creating art, for me, it's a lot easier to find compassion for myself when I'm creating this song rather than just writing or saying things about myself.
It sounds really cathartic.
It is very cathartic. Songwriting has been the most cathartic thing for me.
You know, you've talked about audience response, and people are really like seeing themselves in you and connecting, which is really beautiful. What's your family's response been?
It's been different depending on the family member. The family members that I'm really close to, the response has been very supportive and also very emotional, which makes sense. I wouldn't expect anything different. I have some family members who make comments about, well, you're just always writing sad songs. Why are you so sad? You sound so sad, Cassidy. And yeah, I don't really know what else to say about that.
Has everyone in your family, those members closest to you, Do you think they really understand what you're doing with your music?
I think that some family members really understand what I'm doing through my music, and I think that for some family members, it's just not as easy to understand. I think for the family members who have kind of worked through things in a similar way to me might understand a little bit more. You know, there's people in my life, not just my direct family, but I think who worry about me from hearing about my music, who worry that I'm too sad. Well, something that I've realized is that my teenage self comes out a lot in my music. When I was, 15 to 17, there was so much anger and so much confusion and these feelings that things are just unfair. This kind of weight of responsibility, seeing the people that I love hurting. Those feelings, especially anger, didn't have anywhere to go. It didn't feel like there was a safe place or even a place for those feelings to be explored. And so I think it comes out a lot in my music. When I listen back, especially to this latest album, there's so much teenage Cass in there. There's a lot of anger, there's some sarcasm, there's a lot of judgment, a lot of shame, mostly directed towards myself, not a lot of compassion. It comes out especially in a few songs. But a lot of these songs are exploring feelings that were stuck, and writing the song kind of helped me move through them. But what you're hearing in the song is that feeling of feeling trapped and stuck. There are a few songs that are kind of written in retrospect of those places, and there are a few songs that kind of feel like I'm on the other side of a feeling, but a lot of them hold a lot of shame.
Therapy has been part of your life, but most recently you've actually received a diagnosis of complex post-traumatic stress disorder, complex trauma. Can you tell me about how that changed your approach to songwriting and how the new album reflects that?
Being diagnosed with CPTSD was not a surprise. I went into my meeting with a psychiatrist pretty much looking for a complex PTSD diagnosis, and that is because I had spent the last couple years in therapy, had done a lot of my own research, and really felt like I knew what was going on. When I went to get a diagnosis, a large part of that was getting some validation that I actually did understand myself and I did know what was going on. I think something that I really struggle with is trusting myself. Trusting my own feelings, trusting my experience, trusting my memories. And this is very common with people. This is very common for people with complex trauma. So yeah, it wasn't a surprise, but it was validating, and it did kind of set me on a path of knowing what I was tackling and trying to find the best tools to work through it, which was not just therapy, not just talk therapy, but different somatic practices, ways to calm my nervous system and get into my body. That has been extremely helpful. And songwriting is one of the ways that I kind of get into my body and bypass the very critical mind that I'm usually trying to quiet down. The decision to incorporate the diagnosis into the album was mostly just that it was true to my experience. And also something that I've realized now being diagnosed and talking about it with first just close friends and then more openly was that there's a lot more people being diagnosed with this than I thought. And a lot of people who are being diagnosed recently because it is a condition that is only really starting to be really explored. It's been around for a while, but it can be a very confusing diagnosis because it overlaps with many other diagnoses, and a lot of the symptoms are conditions in themselves. So I experience a lot of anxiety, depression, dissociation, panic attacks, flashbacks. All these things can exist outside of complex trauma, but it's really understanding the history behind these symptoms that can lead to a more whole diagnosis.
What have been some of the early responses to this particular album?
Yeah, I think that I'll know a lot better once it's out there, but as far as performing these songs live, the audience reaction has been really compassionate. It has made people comfortable coming up to me to share that they went through something similar or that they were diagnosed with complex trauma or something that shares similar symptoms.